The book of Jubilees, chapter 18, we're continuing on when Yah tempted Abraham to sacrifice Isaac. Chapter 18. And Elohim Yahuwah said to him, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Behold, here am I. And he said, Take thy beloved son whom thou lovest, even Isaac, and go into the high country, and offer him on one of the mountains which I will point out unto thee. And he rose early in the morning and saddled his ass, and he took his 2 young men with him, and Isaac his son, and clave the wood of the burnt offering. And he went to the place on the 3rd day, and he saw the place afar off. And he came to a well of water, and he said to his young men, Abide ye here with the ass, and the lad, meaning Isaac, shall go yonder. And when we have worshipped, we shall come again to you. And he took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac his son. And he took his hand the fire and the knife, and they went both of them together to that place. And Isaac said to his father, Father. And he said, Here am I, my son. And he said unto him, Behold the fire, and the knife, and the wood. But where is the sheep for the burnt offering, father? And he said, Elohim Yahuwah will provide for himself a sheep for a burnt offering, my son. And he drew near to the place of the mount of Elohim Yahuwah. And he built an altar, and he placed the wood on the altar, and bound Isaac his son, and placed him on the wood which was upon the altar, and stretched forth his hand to take the knife to slay Isaac his son. And I stood before him, and before the prince of Mastema. And Yahuwah said, Bid him not to lay his hand on the lad, nor to do anything to him, for I have shown that he fears Yahuwah. And I called to him from heaven, and said unto him, Abraham, Abraham. And he was terrified, and said, Behold, here am I. And I said unto him, Lay not thy hand upon thy lad, neither thou anything to him. For now I have shown that thou fearest Yahuwah, and hast not withheld thy son, thy firstborn son, from me. And the prince Mastema was put to shame. And Abraham lifted up his eyes, and looked, and behold, a ram caught by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram, and offered it for a burnt offering instead of his son. And Abraham called that place Yahuwah Yireh had seen, so that it is said, Yahuwah had seen, that is Mount Zion. And Abraham called that place Yahuwah had seen. Okay, so now who is this Mastema? I was doing a little research and came across a couple books that proclaims that he's the prince of darkness, another name for Satan or Belial. So according to Wikipedia, Mastema is an angel who persecutes evil in the Hebrew folklore. He carries out punishments for Elohim. He tempts humans and tests their faith. He asks Yahuwah to permit him to have demons as his subordinates. And then according to this other website called the Mystica, they proclaim that Mastema is the devil's name in the Jewish book of Jubilees. He is said to be the chief of evil spirits and the enemy of righteousness. According to the Jubilees, it was Mastema rather than Yahuwah who tested Abraham and killed the firstborns in the land of Egypt. In Hosea, Mastema means enmity. That was in Hosea 9:7. In the book of Jubilees, the term the prince of Mastema is the prince of enmity, as well as Mastema as a proper name. AGH, I don't know what that means. And that was from the Mystica.com website. So let's continue on chapter 18. And Yahuwah called Abraham by his name a second time from heaven, as he caused us to appear to speak to him in the name of Yahuwah. And he said, By myself have I sworn, said Yahuwah, because thou hast done this thing, and thou hast not withheld thy son, thy beloved son, from me. This is a blessing. I will bless thee, and in multiplying I will multiply thy seed as the stars of heaven, and as the sands which is on the seashore. And thy seed shall inherit the cities of its enemies, And in thy seed shall all nations of the earth be blessed, because thou hast obeyed my voice, and I have shown to all that thou art a faithful unto me in all that I have said unto thee. Go in peace. So a witness to that story is in the book of Genesis, chapter 22, 1 through 18 verse. So here's the book of Genesis, verse 22. And it came to pass after these things that Elohim Yahuwah did tempt Abraham, and said unto him, Abraham. And he said, Behold, here am I. And he said, Take now thy son, thy only son, Isaac, who thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him therefore a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I will tell thee of. And Abraham rose up early in the morning, and saddled his ass, and took 2 of his young men with him, and Isaac his son, and clave the wood for the burnt offering, and rose up and went into the place of which Elohim Yahuwah had told him. Then on the 3rd day Abraham lifted up his eyes, and saw that the place was far off. And Abraham said unto his young men, Abide ye here with the ass, and I and the lad will go yonder and worship, and come again to you. And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering, and laid it upon Isaac and his son, and he took the fire in his hand, and a knife, and they went both of them together. And Isaac spake unto Abraham his father, and said, My father. And he said, Here am I, my son. And he said, Behold the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering? And Abraham said, My son Elohim will provide himself a lamb for a burnt offering. So they went both of them together, and they came to the place which Elohim Yahuwah had told him of. And Abraham built an altar there, and he laid the wood in order, and bound Isaac his son, and laid him on the altar upon the wood. And Abraham stretched forth his hands, and took the knife to slay his son. And the angel of Yahuwah called unto him out of heaven, and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here am I. And he said, Lay not thine hands upon thy lad, which was Isaac, neither do thou anything unto him. For now I know that thou fearest Elohim, seeing thou hast not withheld thy son, thy only son, from me. And Abraham lifted up his eyes, and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram, and offered him up for a burnt offering in the stead of his son. And Abraham called the name of that place Yahuwah Yireh, as it is said to this day, In Mount of Yahuwah it shall be seen. And the angel of Yahuwah called unto Abraham out of the heaven the 2nd time, and said, By myself have I sworn, said Yahuwah, for because thou hast done this thing, and hast not withheld thy son, thy only son, that in blessing I will bless thee, and in multiplying I will multiply thy seed as the stars of the heaven, and as the sand which is upon the seashore. And thy seed shall possess the gate of his enemies, and in thy seed shall all nations of the earth be blessed, because thou hast obeyed my voice. So continuing back to the book of Jubilees, chapter 18, verse 17, finalizing chapter 18. And Abraham went to his young men, and they arose and went together to Beersheba. And Abraham, in 20:10 a.m., dwelt by the well of the oath. And he celebrated this festival every year 7 days with joy. And he called it the festival of Yahuwah, according to the 7 days during which he went and returned in peace. And accordingly has it been ordained and written on the heavenly tablets regarding Israel and its seed, that they shall observe the festival 7 days with the joy of the festival. And that's the end of chapter 17. I know a lot of people say that I know him by Yah, so I'm going to say Yah don't tempt people. But according to scripture, that's how he probably uses evil and temptations to get us to do good and to prove our faithfulness. Deuteronomy 4:34 says, O hath Elohim say to go and take him a nation from the midst of another nation, by temptations, by signs, and by wonders, and by war, and by a mighty hand, and by a stretched out arm, and by great terrors, according to all that Yahuwah your Elohim did for you in Egypt before your eyes. So Yahuwah, he does these things to get us to do right. And Genesis 22 verse 1 says, And it came to pass after these things that Elohim did tempt Abraham, and said unto him, Abraham. And he said, Behold, here am I, who tempting him to sacrifice his son Isaac. And the other part about temptation is in Deuteronomy 7 verse 19. The great temptation the great temptations which thine eyes saw, and the signs and the wonders, and the mighty hand and the stretched out arm, whereby Yahuwah thy Elohim brought thee out, so shall Yahuwah thy Elohim do unto all the people whom thou art afraid. So Yahuwah wants us to love him. He's our only Elohim. Trust and believe and have faith in him, and do not worship any other idols. And he will test our faith if we say we love him and do otherwise. That's the end of chapter 18 of the book of Jubilees.